Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're back basically after taking the bye week off, resting up, taking some time away from the podcast. We're back. It's FSU week, always one of the best weeks of the year. This game has maybe a little less juice after Florida State fell to Virginia on Friday night. We'll share some thoughts, early first impressions on Florida State here at the start of the week later in the podcast. At the start of the podcast here, want to get Gabby on to discuss some recruiting developments, recruiting buzz, etc., because that's kind of the point of emphasis during a bye week. So before we jump into all that, I want to highlight two of our sponsors. Of course, Canes Connection. That's Miami's collective. They play a significant role in helping Miami in the talent acquisition space. So go to canesconnection.com and go support those guys best you can. Any dollar helps, every dollar helps, and it's a really cool grassroots way to support the program. I think this week, Miami and Florida State, Florida State's definitely much improved year over year. But I think it's going to be clear to the eye that Miami looks different than Florida State talent-wise, body type-wise. And this has been a 4-year process by Canes Connection, by the staff to get the roster to this point. And but you have to keep reinvesting. So go support those guys, canesconnection.com. Also, of course, want to highlight our guy, Nick Musarino at Musarino Law. If you've been injured in a slip and fall, a boating accident, trucking accident, Uber, Lyft accident, any type of car accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney you should contact at 561-960-9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law. I know Nick is hyped for this week's game. Florida State week is here. Nick loves the way that they're looking so far through these first 4 games, and I'm sure he's happy to talk Canes football if you hit him up as well. So again, 561-960-9870 or visit his website, flinjury.law. All right, Gabby, as I mentioned in this podcast, really wanted to dive into recruiting again. I think recruiting, it never stops for the staff, right? But in terms of just news happening, it kind of goes to the back burner a little bit during the month of August, which is fall camp. And then this first month of the season certainly was important with some visits here for some of these home games. But really, the bye week was a time for the staff to get out on the road, a time for Miami to crank up the heat on some of the guys they'd like to flip into the class, et cetera, et cetera. So, and also, let's start here. Miami picked up a commitment last week during the bye week, right? Frederick Saintius. You've discussed him multiple times here on the podcast because he'd been coming to some of those games in the first month of the season. Big, long defensive tackle, 6'5", 6'4", 285-ish type of defensive tackle. To me, he's kind of like an upside guy, and he's the type of guy that you bet on. He's out of St. John Newman here in Naples. And to me, he's a guy that you take him, you see what you got in 2 or 3 years, because he does have the couple of things you can't teach: the body type and also the athletic potential at his body type. But tell us about this commitment and how excited is Miami to land him in this class?
Yeah, David, I think Miami's really excited to add him just because, one, I think they place a premium on the senior evaluations, right? We've talked about that. And I think Saintius is a guy that I think that from junior to senior year, the internal belief is that he's shown the improvements. This is a guy who's relatively new to football, moved to Florida from Haiti. I think in high school kind of took up the sport. I think he wrestles too, so he's like a multi-sport athlete. I think he might do some track and field stuff, David. I don't know, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
But so
discus.
So three sport athlete, really just kind of diving into like the sports culture here. And I think football, with you talk about the size that you can't teach six, I would probably say 6'4.5", maybe 285 to
Yeah.
290 already. So again, to your point, the athletic upside and potential with just like the God-given mass that he has, you roll the dice on that guy, especially if you start kind of see the arrow pointing up developmentally as far as just how he's getting better. He's coached by a former NFL player. So a guy that kind of just understands, some of the nuances. So I think the fact that you're seeing that development, I think, is an encouraging sign. Plus the size, plus it being a line of scrimmage position, no brainer to me. He was a guy that was kind of
Mm.
surging heading into his senior year. I think Michigan State kind of cracked it open. He was originally committed to FAU. Credit to Devin Santana, a former Miami staffer, for kind of, finding that hidden gem in Southwest Florida. But word got out. Michigan State got involved. Florida got involved. Florida State, Miami, Oklahoma was talking to him. I think there were some major Big Ten programs that were kind of kicking the tires as well. So this is someone that could continue to elevate his stock as his senior year progresses, and a guy that schools kind of started to take notice of late. Credit to Miami, got him in back-to-back weekends, kind of boxed out Florida State. He was originally supposed to get up to Tallahassee for an FSU game, kind of boxed him out, got him back for the Florida game after he took in the USF game, and were able to kind of seal the deal. So, nice in-state win at a key position where it's important to just kind of stack body types. They have Tyson Bacon, who's like the 6'3", 250-ish pounder. You got the big interior body, and Anthony Kennedy was like 6'3", 330-ish, and now you got a 6'4", 6'5", 290-ish guy in Saintis that and I think you just kind of keep finding those types of guys, keep bringing them in and see what you got in them.
Yeah, and to me, like, you know, I think some people might look at this as like, oh, they're taking an FAU commit. I wouldn't view him that way. I don't think this is even rolling the dice because, like you said, he's kind of a late bloomer. I think if you watch his highlights from this year, yes, he's playing against small school competition, but you could tell the body type looks the right way. You can tell the athleticism and the knockback he plays with against the competition he's going against. Um, it's all there to be molded at a high Power Four level. And again, 2 or 3 years, you see what you got, and I would bet he's going to be at least a rotational defensive tackle when it's his time to play and contribute at Miami. So to me, this is a great get because these type of body types and the athleticism at this, body type, it's pretty rare in the state of Florida to find guys that check these boxes. So I think it's a great get. All right, let's go into just some of the buzz, wherever you want to say, Gabby,
Yeah.
flip, buzz, or just guys Miami's looking to close with here in this 26 class. So just kind of set the table. Right now as we speak, Miami currently has the number 12 class in the country. They have 23 commits. It's still the best class amongst ACC schools. FSU is second in the ACC with the number 14 class, and they have 24 commits. Miami has the best class of all of the big three. So it goes Miami 12, Florida 13, Florida State 14. So they're all kind of right there. But Miami certainly has kind of the most buzz right now in terms of how they're performing on the field. And they would love to, um, have that translate into some recruiting success, flips, even though those might be more and more rare here in this modern era because nowadays guys commit in the summer, they sign their deals or whatever, and it's just hard to get guys to flip late in the process. But we have seen Miami pull off some flips here during the season, the last couple cycles. So the floor is yours. Wherever you want to take this, whatever you want to share here on the pod, let's roll.
Yeah, a few names to know, right? And we'll see what the ultimate flip rate is, right? But you got to kind of shoot your shot at all these guys. So I think Miami will eventually flip some guys. We'll see what it ultimately looks like, how many. Two of them last year, Hayden Lowe, 5-star edge from Southern California, and Josh Moore. Josh Moore's already contributing, for Miami and making plays, which is a big deal. But there's more. Miami's going to get, they're going to make some things happen here in the fall. It's just a matter of who and a matter of when. Who I want to start with, David, is just right here locally in Dade County. Five-star wide receiver Calvin Russell committed to Syracuse this summer. It was kind of shocking to the recruiting world that he would kind of make that decision. But of course, we kind of saw the buzz that Syracuse had on the field at the end of last year with just how productive they were on offense. They had flashes this season against Syracuse. Quarterback goes down. It's not looking as great for the Orange. But Miami's kind of maintained its pursuit of Calvin Russell. He's been at 2 home games so far this season. Was at the Notre Dame game, was at the Florida game. I definitely think, David, there's some buzz building there. The more and more I kind of poke and dig into this, the more kind of just sort of, I don't even know if I want to call it confidence at this point, but definitely some very real buzz about where things are between Miami and Calvin Russell. Again, these types of recruitments, I don't not throwing a timeline or anything like that, but I do think that things between Miami and Calvin Russell are as possible as they've really been at any point of this recruiting cycle.
How much do you think like Malachi Tony doing well as a freshman? Honestly, the same technically the same age as Calvin
Yeah.
Russell, right? And then also Josh Moore's flashing too. Do you think that's caught his attention at all?
I think so. I think it has to, right? And I think you also have to kind of look at the situations too. And look, again, Syracuse, Farron Brown's done a really good job with Syracuse, but the reality, the quarterback goes down and it's been tough for them offensively, just what they've been able to do. So, they upset Clemson last week, and then they kind of they play Duke in the dome, and they only score 3 points. So yeah, and then I think you kind of pair that up with Malachi Tony's got on the field quickly and is playing. Josh Moore got on the field quickly and he's contributing. And both those guys are producing at, for freshmen at a really high rate. And, that's encouraging. So Miami's never been afraid to play these young guys. And I think Calvin Russell, I think you can see why this situation would just be enticing for him. He's, again, a Dade County kid, a Miami legacy. His mom is in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I feel like it should have never really been this complicated with Calvin Russell, but I feel like the deeper and deeper we kind of get into this, I think it's just becoming more and more clear that this is probably a good spot for him to kind of settle in at. He can be home, stay home, do this in front of his family with people he's really close with. He's walking around Hard Rock Stadium with a big cutout of Malachi Tony. I mean,
Yeah.
no real reason to go to upstate New York when this is right in front of you. Again, obviously a lot of things that go into recruitments in this era. It's not always as simple as it may seem, but still, I think
Right.
at this point it's fair to categorize Calvin Russell as someone who's, I don't know if I even want to call it trending, want to go that far, but I think that there is again a very real
Watching.
possibility that Calvin Russell ends up at Miami. Let's see how this thing plays out.
And just math wise, right? If we're talking about how does Miami finish with a top 10 class, landing a guy like a Calvin Russell helps them in that math because he is I think 24/7 has him as a 5 star and he's
Right.
like a top 50 composite player. So he wouldn't, I don't think, like, let's say, for instance, he commits to Miami today. I don't think that would bump them up into the top 10
No.
just on that alone, but it would go a long way towards getting there. They'd be a lot closer with him in the class than without. Who else Miami's trying to sniff around and try and flip? Would would you put in that category of like, okay, if Miami flips Calvin Russell and lands this guy, the math is there to get into the top 10.
Yeah, I think from a math standpoint, I think it's Justice Fitzpatrick, just playing with the class
Yeah.
calculator, trying to figure out how Miami could get into that top 10. I think Justice Fitzpatrick, the blue chip defensive back out of St. Thomas Aquinas. Again, Miami's, really working that recruitment as well. From my understanding, Mario Cristobal is personally taking an interest in that recruitment. Of course, their relationship goes back to when Coach Cristobal recruited his older brother, Minka Fitzpatrick, out of the New Jersey area to Alabama, eventually becomes a first-round pick by the Dolphins. The family moves down to South Florida. Justice has essentially grown up here, and now Minka Fitzpatrick is back with the Dolphins. So an opportunity for the family to kind of stay closer and more kind of tight-knit. But again, this is one that Coach Cristobal, from what I've gathered, Goddard has his paws all over. So, when he kind of identifies something and wants it, I think, he can be quite persistent. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. But Justice Fitzpatrick is definitely someone who's in that category, as is Tank Jones, David, the top 247 edge out of Alabama. Jason Taylor went to go see him at his high school this week during the bye week. He's someone that committed to Oregon, is still exploring opportunities at Texas A&M as well. So there's still a lot of things, moving pieces that are kind of going on here. But Tank Jones is someone that if Miami were to get him, I believe he would be in that 5-star composite category. That would be a huge boost to Miami's class as far as just pushing them into that top 10 range.
So those are your top 10 guys to know. There's others too, but those are the guys to know for now. Who are some other guys just adding to the class that Miami's making a push for here during this bye week?
Yeah, I think Blake Stewart is a big one, the safety out of the Atlanta area. Again, Zach Etheridge, Will Harris both spent, I think, 2 days up in the Atlanta area this week, checking in on multiple targets. Blake Stewart is someone that I think that they're just kind of all in on. I think they're making it very clear that this is one of their top priority potential. I think the top priority at safety, at least one of them. As far as just guys they feel like they need to get. Blake Stewart's committed to Clemson. Clemson, their season is obviously kind of spiraling a little bit. They've already had one prospect decommit. So, I mean, I think that that's possible more on the way. I know Blake Stewart is seriously considering Miami. Of course, Clemson has that no visit policy. And if, he wants to start taking his visits, I think that would be problematic as far as his status as a Clemson commit. But at this point, I think he's, very eager to continue to explore Miami. I know him and Miami are still having a lot of encouraging and positive dialogue. We'll see where things ultimately go, because again, it comes down to just how far do you want to kind of push it while maintaining, that ability to just go to Clemson if you want to keep that door open. But I know Miami's definitely in his ear, and he is eager about that. Tyreek Green is another Atlanta-based safety that Miami's all in on. George commit was back in Athens this past weekend. I think that one may be tougher at the end of the day, just because Georgia is Georgia. This is a kid from Buford. I mean, this is someone who always imagined kind of going to Georgia. I think more of like a nickel type of projection. I think that's kind of like the vision for him. He's also a running back in college. He also has a special teams value. So a multifaceted athlete who does a lot of different things well. He visited 2 weeks ago. Miami is still very much involved in that one. Jamar Owens is an interesting name in Atlanta. He's an Indiana commit out of Douglas County. Miami kind of turned the heat up on him. I think like July months, and they are continuing to explore that. And I believe they went to go watch him on Friday night actually play. So he's someone that I think is eager to explore Miami. Also, he told me that he plans to get down to Miami. I think he nearly got down for the Florida game. I think just travel plans fell through or just weren't able to materialize. So he wasn't able to make it down. But I know Miami and Jamar Owens are having a lot of positive dialogue. So Indiana's having a good season too. So that's something that you might need to fight off if you choose to kind of go all in on that route. I'm a big fan of the kid. I think he's a really good player. Luke Brewer is a tight end out of Iowa, recently reclassified from the class of 2027 to the class of 2026. Miami went to go see him in Iowa play on Friday night. University of Iowa staff is also there. Iowa State is also another competition. It's really those three schools, from my understanding: Miami, Iowa, Iowa State, that are pushing for him. He is a guy who's already over 6'4", already kind of pushing 230 pounds. Feedback I got on him is essentially he's kind of like the middle spot between Brock Schott and Luka Gilbert. So he's not quite as big and long and tall as Luka Gilbert, but probably has a little bit better fluidity and movement skills as far as just the pass catching. But he probably gives you a little bit more on the line of scrimmage than Brock Schott does, at least right now. But he doesn't have that like insane kind of vertical straight line speed where Brock Schott's like clocking over 20 miles per hour and whatnot. So I think he's more of just like a middleman of the middle point of those two types of guys. Miami's really excited about him. I think they have a really good shot at landing him to be kind of like the number 2 tight end to Israel Briggs, who's just kind of like a true flexy tight end that they're really excited about. And then Lakai Tompkins is another one that Miami went to go see play on Friday night. They played IMG Academy in Alabama. Well, IMG Academy played at Phoenix City Central in Alabama. Matt Merritt was in the Yellowhammer State to watch Lakai Tompkins play. So, uh, different feedback as far as what he is. He plays running back at the high school level. He's committed to Louisville to play running back. Miami thinks he could also kind of transition to the defensive side of the ball and potentially be a really good athlete along, kind of like line of scrimmagey, maybe linebacker. I'm not really sure. I think he's one of those guys they would just want to get him into the program, maybe figure it out. But I do think running back is a very real possibility, especially if Derek Cooper doesn't come here or Jay Lamar doesn't come here. I think Lakai Tompkins potentially settling in at running back at Miami, if they're able to flip him from Louisville, is amongst the possibilities too. So a lot of names still in play, more that I didn't mention here, but I think that that's kind of like the juicy chunk of guys that I
Yeah.
think we need to that I'm kind of focused on right now.
Let me ask you too, because quarterback's always interesting. Quarterback talent acquisition, and Miami, like a lot of schools now, they want to be a cycle ahead on their quarterback recruiting and commitment, ideally. And it seems like, I mean, you've mentioned it here on the podcast, right? Trent Seaborn seems to be Miami's top priority target for the 2027 class. Is that fair and true to say? And where are things at there?
Definitely fair and true to say. Trent Seaborn's their guy. Shannon Dawson went to go watch Trent Seaborn on Thursday play against Clay Chalkville, which is another big program there in Alabama. And, again, feedback from that was all positive as far as just where things stand. I think Miami's just battling out South Carolina, and I think Oregon's maybe more real of a player in this than maybe I previously anticipated. Well, I mean, I think he's one of the school. Oregon was one of the schools I mentioned when I most recently wrote about him a couple weeks ago before the visit. But South Carolina's in there, Oregon's in there. I think that there is confidence as far as just Miami's ability to potentially get him. Like, I do think he's someone that Miami is kind of zeroed in on and they feel like they can get, but he hasn't made a decision yet. So Miami's still kind of keeping the door open to other 2027 quarterback targets. After they watched Trent Seaborn on Thursday, Shannon Dawson was, stayed in the state of Alabama, went to go watch Gunnar Rivers, which is the son of Philip Rivers, of course, the NFL quarterback, played for the Chargers and some other teams. I don't know, Giants. Did he play for anyone else? But Philip Rivers' son, Gunnar Rivers, and he's one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the class of 2027. So that's another one that it seems like they're kind of doing their homework on. He hasn't really. He's another 2027 quarterback that hasn't seemed to narrow it down or kind of zero in on any school either. So if the door's still open there, maybe another potential 27 quarterback to explore. But Trent Seaborn is definitely the guy from what I've gathered.
Yeah. So lots of recruiting buzz happening. Again, go subscribe to InsideView.com. You can be up to speed on all these recruiting developments. It's going to be exciting because it does look like Miami's going to have a pretty special year here, and Mario Cristobal is going to look to capitalize on that level of play on the field. Gabby, what's your confidence of like Miami being able to land a top 10 class? Do you think Miami is in a position to pull that off?
Yeah, I think a lot has to happen, right? Because even if you start sprinkling in some of these other guys like the Blake Stewarts and the Luke Brewers, like you still need like those two wouldn't
Yeah.
be enough to get there. Even if you throw in a Lakai Tompkins, he wouldn't be enough to get you there. So you'd have to flip the Calvin Russells, Justice Fitzpatrick,
Yep.
Tank Jones, potentially Derek Cooper to get into that range. I
Right.
think you would have to flip at least two of those guys to like try to
Probably
finish it.
three.
I think three to solidify yourself in the top 10, two to be fringe, like maybe 10, 11-ish.
Right.
Like if you want to maybe finish at 10, you got to at least do two. But yeah, I think some of these elite guys. So I think it's going to happen. I do think Miami's going to finish with the top 10 class. I just think that there's more they got to kind of do here,
Yeah.
and it's got to be some big fish.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. All right. Let's turn the page from recruiting to just early first impressions of FSU. And look, Miami is just coming off a bye. So, Gabby, you and I both had plenty of time to study up and watch FSU, whether it was their season opener against Alabama, got to watch that again, and or watch them against Virginia here, right? Uh, And so I just want to have like a free flowing conversation, just our first impressions on Florida State, who they are going into this game against Miami. They're now ranked, I believe I saw number 18 in the latest AP poll. Miami's down to number 3 after Oregon got a victory on the road against Penn State. So, and look, this was going to be, I mean, unfortunately, this was going to be probably the college game day spotlight game. It is the 7:30 ABC game, so it's a primetime game, but it was going to be the game of the day from an ESPN standpoint. But Florida State didn't hold up its end of the bargain and handle business against Virginia, which, I think is interesting that they weren't able to do that. But still a big game. And Miami's going to see the best that Florida State has to offer. So let's start with offense. Gus Malzahn, of course, is their offensive coordinator. And look, Gabby, just watching them, right? One thing that stands out to me is it really is it's much better, honestly, than I anticipated. The marriage between Gus Malzahn and what he wants to do on offense, and Tommy Castellanos' skill set and how he can fit into what Gus Malzahn wants to do on offense. Um, and really, I think why it is working best is Tommy is um, performing at the highest level as a passer of his career to this point of the season. Now he's not, his game is not him dropping. He's not a drop back passer, but he is having more consistency throwing the ball this year compared to his first years at the college level as a starter at Boston College. Some of that is due to the weapons he has to work with at Florida State too. But really, just watching them, Tommy Castellanos makes them go, and also Gus Malzahn has done a really nice job of understanding how Tommy's skill set puts defenses in constant conflict. And Gus Malzahn leans into those tendencies and knows how a defense is going to think when Tommy does a certain way. And he has kind of a counter off all these different situations and plays. And it is going to be a difficult game for Miami's defense to try and contain Tommy Castellanos, who's one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the country. But just talk about Tommy, Gus Malzahn's offense, just what
Yeah.
you've noticed about the way they do things here through these first month of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy Castellanos has been a lot of fun to watch. Like he's just like a fun quarterback, like fun college quarterback. I think he fits into this Gus Malzahn system really well. He's like really athletic. The way that he kind of moves around, I think he's the type of guy that I think people just like to like the people are going to play hard for him because I think he's kind of that dude that has kind of a chip on his shoulder. He's willing to kind of put his body on the line. He runs. Again, I think I mean, really good athlete. And again, I think it just kind of fits. And I think Gus Malzahn, to your point, David, has done a really good job of just tailoring this thing to in a way that just like perfectly suits him. And so yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a lot of kind of the horizontal eye candy type of stuff, kind of like rollouts to kind of give Tommy an opportunity to run, kind of open up the middle of the field. I think they kind of simplify things for him in the passing game as far as just giving him opportunities to make plays. Deuce Robinson on the outside has been kind of a safety blanket for him. He was on Saturday against Virginia when he just there was at a point where he was just kind of chucking it up to Deuce Robinson. Not super like overwhelmed by the supporting cast around him. They got some good, nice pieces. Makai Dancy, someone that's been doing a lot of big stuff in kind of the jet sweeps and
Gadget,
those. Yeah, kind of as a gadget guy with just really elite speed. I saw he's like ACC I don't know if it's AC champion or ACC record holder in the 400 meters. So he has like insane speed and athleticism, and they've been
correct.
finding creative ways to get him the ball. Randy Pittman's someone they use in kind of like an H-backish type way, short yardage type of situations. Made an excellent play and catch, good throw and catch. At the end of regulation there, for at the in that Virginia game on Saturday. So yeah, to me, it's a fun offense to watch. I think Tommy Castellanos does a good job running it, and I think Gus Malzahn has done a great job of just tailoring it to his skill set. So, they're a good group, and I think Tommy Castellanos' athleticism masks a lot of, the kind of offensive line issues that I think that they do have.
Yeah. I think so. Before we move on to the offensive line, like Castellanos did make two big time throws at the end of that Virginia game. One was caught to Pittman. That was an incredible play by Castellanos and Pittman. The other one was in overtime. He fit the ball right in the window to Deuce Robinson for an explosive, would have been an explosive touchdown, and Deuce bobbled it and wasn't able to control it in the end zone. Um, but Deuce was phenomenal before that. So I think in that game he was like 5 of 5 on contested catch targets. So he is a big 6'6", 220-pound receiver that again, and this is partly like what Gus Malzahn does too. Like when Gus Malzahn's not about like, oh, we need to spread the ball around to our receivers in the passing game. He's the type of coordinator that's like, no, that's my wide receiver one. I'm gonna force feed him till you stop him. And Deuce Robinson is that guy. You're right about how I think, and look, I think you would agree with this. Like both things are true. Number one, FSU's offensive line overall is kind of average to me. Number two, I think it is significantly improved year over year
Oh,
compared to what they
definitely.
had on the offensive line this year's offensive line that they have at least, they have size. They have somewhat of the body types that you want on the offensive line. Last year's group did not. So, I think this year's group lacks athleticism and those things. Obviously, if they were big time players, they would be moved on to the NFL rather than, be kind of veteran senior transfers at FSU. But I think both things are true. They've elevated the offensive line pretty significantly, honestly, year over year, because that offensive line last year was one of
Yeah,
the
it was
worst
really
in the
bad.
country. Um, but also it's a fairly average group to me. I don't know. I
Yeah, no,
think
that's
it's
fair.
an area that Miami should be able to take advantage of.
Absolutely. That's I think I'm just talking about it from a Miami perspective. Like I think Miami's defensive line is way better than Florida State's offensive line. But yeah, year over year they've definitely gotten better, and they do have size. I mean, their right tackle's like, is he like he's like 6'7". They got some big guys
Yeah,
out there,
yeah. And
and they do a good
this is
job run in the running game just in general. Like I mean, they ran for like 250 yards against Virginia Tech or against Virginia on Saturday.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. They do a good yeah. Um this is probably it's the third best offensive line. I think they're closer to USF honestly than they are to Florida or Notre Dame's offensive line. Um, but it's the third best offensive line Miami has played, and this will be their fifth game of the season. Um, Flipping it to the defense, to me, like again, we'll start with line of scrimmage, I guess, and to me, like they're a team that doesn't have much pass rushing juice. Their one pass rusher they kind of have is James Williams, who is a Nebraska transfer. Um, and he's their best pass rusher, but he's interesting because he's kind of a big liability in the run game. He can kind of get bullied in the run game. You can go at him, and it typically doesn't go well for him. He's also a guy that misses a bunch of tackles if you go at him too. So, but I will say their front is kind of stout in terms of like containing the run game. It's led by Daryl Jackson, former Hurricane, huge body type, 6'6", 340 pounds, well put together, crazy long wingspan. Um, so yeah, just their defensive front, Gabby, like they run a 3-3-5, which is weird for Florida State to be running, but that's what they're doing. Um, to me, they're just a team that doesn't have much pass rush juice, but they are kind of stout against the run. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I do. They got again, big body types. Daryl Jackson's big. Got some interesting Miami connections there. You got Daryl Jackson,
Yeah.
who's a former Miami player. You got Daniel Lyons, who is a Homestead product, so Dade County guy. Two of their, I feel like at this point of the season, two of their top five rotational defensive linemen are true
Yeah.
freshmen from Miami in the Desir
Yep.
twins out of Miami Norland, who, honestly are probably better than I thought that they were going to be. Especially this
Yep.
early on, they were
They're
always
good
big.
run stoppers.
Yeah, they're big
I don't
athletic
know about
kids. Yeah.
pass rush,
Right, right, right. No,
but
just in general, they're actually giving them some like
they're
decent
playing. Yeah.
reps. Yeah, they're giving like they're giving them playable reps as first year guys. And look, those two are always like big kids, but they're I'm surprised that it's clicked this soon for those two. But yeah, to your point, like they have size and they have mass and they have big older guys, but again, to me, it's definitely not a lot of pass rushing juice. I think they kind of require additional help, like from
Yeah.
numbers wise, in order to kind of generate some pressures. Ashlyn Baker, I think he had like a sack or two in the Virginia game. I feel like he's someone that they
Parker.
kind of have to
Yeah.
be, or yeah,
Safety.
Barker, yeah, that they have to kind of bring him down to kind of start generating some pressure on the quarterback and stuff. So, it's interesting to me to see how it matches up because again, I think that's another area where Miami has a significant advantage, especially from a pass protection standpoint.
Their linebackers to me are they're like dependable guys, but they're fairly average from like an athleticism or like impact to the game standpoint. To me, the corners are solid, but I would say they're not up to like the FSU standard of what cornerback play should be. They're probably led by Jerry Wilson, who's a Houston transfer,
Mhm.
originally from the state of Florida. Um, to me, their corners are best in zone rather than man to man. They play a lot of zone in general. Earl Little, their safety plays hard. Edwin Joseph is a South Florida guy. He's primarily their nickel. You know, he plays hard. He has a little playmaking ability
Mhm.
to him as well. Just in general, to me, Gabby, like this defense, it plays really hard.
Right.
The talent doesn't really impress me all that much. You can kind of push them around,
Mhm.
but they do fight. They do fight, and their personnel isn't good, and maybe that's why, in some ways, they're doing the 3-3-5 scheme. That's why Mike Norvell wanted to go to that. Um, but yeah, to me, like they're just a defense with some personnel deficiencies. Like their defensive linemen can stop the run, but they can't rush the passer. They can't do both, right? The linebackers kind of to me struggle in space, but they can come downhill and help stop the run. The
Mhm.
secondary is good in zone sometimes, but in man coverage, it's kind of an up and down thing. The safeties will play with physicality, but wrapping up and tackling at times is an
Right.
up and down
An issue.
experience. So that's my read. I to me like their offense is actually pretty good. Their offense can present some issues. Their defense to me is just kind of I don't see it. I don't know. To me, they're just kind of like a regular, pick a name of a hat out of a hat, ACC level defense. Like, oh, this is what a Syracuse defense looks like. I wouldn't push back on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you, and I'm with you on the physical. Like just the fact that they play. It seems like they tried and played hard. It's just they. I feel like they didn't tackle. I think they missed like 15 tackles against Virginia. There was times where it just looked bad. The tackling just looked bad. There wasn't like lack of effort. Like ran hard to the ball, but then it's just like,
Yeah.
just you just got to do more than that at this level. And so yeah, I think it was an issue for Earl Little. It was an issue at times. It was an issue for Edwin Joseph. I felt like at times too, where he wasn't tackling all that well. So again, I'm not super blown away by this team. I mean, at the end, Virginia, which is a respectable offense, I think,
Yeah.
hand delivered them two scores with just horrible interceptions. But otherwise, I had really no trouble moving the ball on them and just getting really physical with them. And I think they were without their starting center, Brady Wilson.
Yeah.
And there was a play, I think it was like a 12 play drive. They ran the ball 11 times and scored. So, I think it was you could get physical with that defense, and I think you could to me you can kind of wear them down relatively quickly, and I think that's kind of what Miami's specialty is, and I think that's kind of like what their goal is offensively. That's kind of like their identity. Like they can obviously pass the ball, but I think with Mario Cristobal and especially in the second half of games, they just like to kind of wear on you if they can, and I think that's going to be to me, just watching that game Saturday, I was like, we're going to be in like the 8 minute mark in the third quarter, and Miami's just going to wear down on these people. Like they're just going to kind of just like, it's hard. And Miami has a physical brand of football. So I think in that way, it plays well into what Miami does offensively. So we'll see how it goes. Again, just roll it, just letting it rip off the dome as far as just kind of what I
Yeah.
saw from,
How do you how do you process, because you watch both the Bama game and the Virginia
yeah.
game? How do you process those results?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, truthfully, honestly, and I'm not trying to. I do think that, and I think it says as much about Alabama too. Like watching Alabama in that
Yeah.
Florida State game, and then watching them on Saturday against Georgia. Like to me, those are two totally different teams from a physicality standpoint. Quarterbacking. I mean, Ty Simpson looks like
Simpson improved.
I
Yep.
don't know what happened in 4 weeks, but I mean, major improvement. The defense played with way more physicality against Georgia. They seemed like they played with none against Florida State. Players who were making awesome plays against Georgia were making horrendous plays against Florida State. So I don't know. And look, credit to FSU for capitalizing and for being ready for that moment. But I think that both things have. I think Florida State played well and executed. At the same time, I think Alabama just was kind of like a shell of themselves, maybe unprepared, and
They seemed
not
like
physical
it.
enough. And
They seem
so,
surprised by what Gus Malzahn wants to do on offense. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
but they were
all their
doing
jet
weird stuff too.
sweeps.
And they're playing like Alabama was playing like their defense, like their nose tackle James Smith, and they were like using him as an edge rusher sometimes, and he would just kind of like he's a big athletic guy, but he was sometimes just getting washed out. Like I didn't understand what they were
Yeah.
exactly doing with some of the like the alignments and stuff, like
Personnel
personnel
use.
packet. Yeah, it seemed weird to me. I was like, I'm not sure what you're doing here. Like these guys are playing horizontal, and you're throwing a 300-pound defensive tackle on the edge and expecting him to like set the edge. Like I'm not sure what the goal, what you're going with here. So it's kind of some mind-boggling decisions and philosophy from Alabama as well as Florida State, performing. But also, I think this Virginia game is more indicative of just what it was playing kind of a well-prepared team that was just ready to kind of take it to them. And I think offensively, they had an identity. Alabama didn't look like they had an identity in that first game. Like, without Jam Miller, I think they were figuring a lot of this stuff out. And I think, well, to me,
Which which game do you think is more telling about who Florida State is? To me, it's the Virginia game.
yeah, same. I think it's the Virginia game.
Yeah, and look, I think Florida State's dangerous. What would worry me from a Miami standpoint about Florida State is the Tommy Castellanos magic. He can just
Yep.
create, improvise, and build confidence with the rest of his team as he does that. And then look, Carson Beck protecting the ball is probably just something we're always going to say every week,
Hmm.
right? Um, so and look, I don't think you can overlook Gabby too. This is Miami's first game on the road. Like this, it's going to be a difficult environment that they're going to have to play in, and that's something that should be accounted for in this matchup. First road game, road atmosphere,
Yeah.
etc. You know, Florida State's
Big
first road
rivalry
game was
game.
at Virginia. Correct. So,
Yeah. All of the
the
things.
flip, I feel like most of the pros though are in Miami's favor. Just not only just how they're built, how they've been playing, how they're battle tested. They've had a bye week to prepare for this. So we'll see how they go out and perform. We'll talk more about this game here in a later podcast this week. I want to go big picture, and we don't have to go too long on this stuff, Gabby, but I think it's interesting. The bye week allows us to really watch ACC and national college football, kind of form some snapshot opinions here after the first month or 5 weeks of the season. And I want to start with the ACC race. And I think it's an interesting conversation, Gabby, from the standpoint of like, I think it's fair to say just how teams look to the eye test it looks like Miami is clearly the top team in the ACC this year. To me, I think the race for second is interesting, and that's
Hmm.
where I want to have the conversation with you. Georgia Tech is kind of second amongst, the betting odds, betting favorites. Georgia Tech is number two, but they were just in a dogfight with Wake Forest on Saturday. That game went to overtime. They ended up Wake Forest went for the 2-point win into overtime, didn't get it. So Georgia Tech won. Um, I'm curious, like, who do you think, like, I don't know who I would clearly
Yeah,
say is okay, this is the team that Miami could face in the ACC championship game because there's a lot of variables at play. Number one, what's your talent? Number two, how are you playing? Number three, who are you playing? And that who are you playing
yeah,
might be the most important factor,
right.
honestly. Like, what's your schedule laying out looking like? And Georgia Tech's, to be fair, is quite favorable.
Hmm.
But how do you handicap it right now? Like, who would you be like, you know what? I would keep an eye on this team.
Yeah, I mean, as far as playing, I think I would probably lean Georgia Tech right now. I'm not convinced about them at all, by the way. Like
I'm not either. Can I tell
I
you, like, they're good, but their style of play worries me because everything they do is like close game,
yeah.
close game, close
Hmm.
game, and sometimes those close games are going to go in your favor.
Right. No, and they were, I mean, they were like a really bad offside, like non-call, like non-offsides call away
Yeah,
from that being, and it was like that game was to the wire. Like Wake Forest's student section was like lining up, getting ready to rush the
yeah,
field. Like it was right there,
yeah.
and it was like a true Wake Forest like would have beaten them, like straight up beat them. It wasn't like fluky. There was nothing fluky about it. Like to me, it was like they would have gotten straight up beat. So not at all convinced about Georgia Tech, but you look at their schedule and it's hard. You want to know who my dark horse is right now, David, in the ACC? And I'm not sure if I'm going to sound crazy, but it might be Duke.
I might be on the same page with you.
I think it might be Duke because I think Darian Mensah's kind of starting to figure it out. Like I think
They
that this is
play
kind.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I'm going Georgia Tech, but honestly, that October 18th,
Yeah,
Georgia Tech and Duke play. The winner of that game, assuming both these teams are still undefeated, like undefeated in the conference at that point, because Duke has two losses, like pretty bad losses. They got crushed by Illinois, and they lost to Tulane pretty bad. But like since then, I mean, they handled NC State. They won by two scores. They just demolished Syracuse. Again, it's all about what you do in ACC play. And if I think Darian Mentis is kind
right.
of starting to figure it out, if Duke, like that Duke Georgia Tech game, which I believe is in it's at Duke.
I don't know where. I don't know
I
where.
can't. I gotta check to see where it is. Let me see. I gotta get Duke's schedule right up in here. It
I
is
have it at Duke. Yeah,
it's
I
at
do.
Duke.
At
The
Duke.
thing is, the
Yeah.
week before, or I guess before, or they have a bye week. They have a bye week before Georgia Tech. Duke does, but they have to go to Cal and play in Berkeley. So that's an interesting little for Duke.
And as we've
That's
talked about, Cal has a favorable schedule too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Even
Cal,
though they just
to
got
me,
hosed by like
it's
San Diego State too. Like I don't know what to make of
right.
this conference. To me, it's like Miami, like
It's
extremely large gap, and then there's like a group of like three schools that I'm not
yes.
even convinced on. Florida State's probably in that group too. Like,
It
they,
would have
they
been Florida State, but they blew
yeah.
it. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I'm
If
not
it
saying they're
wasn't,
out of it,
yeah, they're
but
definitely
they're
not.
behind the eight ball with that
Right.
loss.
And if
Like
you
it.
lose to Miami, you're 0-2 in the conference. Like you
That's
need to
two.
run the
Yeah.
table and need help. Clemson, or I want to honestly say Clemson kind of too, but Clemson already has two losses. Like they need to run the table,
Correct.
and what's that look like for them? But like I also think that there's a world where like the team that, if let's say Miami handles business, assuming Miami handles business, right? I do think that there could potentially be a two-loss like ACC team, like two losses in the conference that
Maybe.
represent that maybe go to that maybe goes to Charlotte, because I think this conference is kind of a crapshoot right now, and I think there's a large chunk of this conference that might just beat each other up, and it's gonna be weird.
Yes.
Like Virginia
Oh,
Tech
it's
just beat
gonna be
NC
weird.
State. Like I feel like things are
Right.
Wake Forest just almost beat Georgia Tech. Like I think that this conference is gonna get weird. I think it's gonna be
What
really
about
interesting to
Virginia?
see.
They're 2-0.
Yeah, Virginia's interesting. I
I
honestly,
don't think they're good,
I don't
but
think they have long. I don't think like I think they're good, but to me they're too like to me they're like a volatile. Like to me there's a little bit there's a little bit too much of a
to me,
volatility factor in there.
all these ACC teams are though. Like
Yeah, I
they're
guess.
all
I was just watching
to
Virginia, and
me.
yeah, I was watching Virginia and I was just like, this team's gonna lose to someone by like 30. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah,
was watching Virginia and like Virginia's
100%.
gonna get crushed by somebody because like they can also just implode. Like I feel like they have so much like imploding potential because the quarterback just kind of lets it rip and like he's gonna get himself himself into some trouble. Like they could also be good, but they're also I think their bad is gonna be really bad. I think so. Like I don't trust Virginia at all. Which makes this Florida State loss to them like mind-boggling to me because I was watching this game, I was like, Virginia's like fun, good, like they might be fun to watch, but they're not like actually good. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what to make of this conference, but honestly, like I've kind of settled into like I'm kind of on like the Duke dark horse train
Duke,
is where I'm at.
Georgia Tech or Duke is probably the safe bet. Florida State too. I mean,
Yeah, of course. I
especially
think
like
Florida State,
let's
yeah.
say if Florida State beats Miami, absolutely, they're
Yeah.
back
Oh,
in it. Like
absolutely.
they're
I think Clemson's back
right
in it.
there.
If Miami has a lot, if like Miami and Florida State both have one loss, like I think we'd start talking about Clemson again, because like that'll be interesting
Yeah.
too. Like, because then they're just
Yeah, I
one
mean
game
Clemson and
back
Florida
of.
State play.
Yeah, exactly. And like
So
that's a, I think that can get interesting too. So, yeah, it's to me this conference is why I think Miami's clearly the best team just because of the way they're built and what they've shown so far. But that number two spot, like I mean, got Louisville in there. I'm also not believer. I'm not like I don't believe in Louisville at all. I don't really
they had to
believe in
come back
Pitt.
to beat Pitt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pitt, yeah, and like Pitt's kind of fun too, but they're also just like one of those weird teams that I just don't think has like some like long-term sustainability. But like I kind of like some of the guys they have. To me, it's
Yeah.
just a mess, man. And I think Pitt already has like Pitt has like two conference losses already. Like they're already like 0-2 in the conference, I think.
Well,
So
they
I don't
lost.
know.
I don't know. They lost to Louisville, but I don't know
They
beyond
lost to
that.
yeah.
But
Oh, okay, maybe just one then. But like Pitt has. I mean, to me, I don't know. This conference is weird.
to me, this conference, like, and we kind of hinted at this in the offseason when we would talk about the transfer portal churn that was happening within the ACC. And we kind of made it clear, like, look, Miami, compared to these ACC teams, Miami's doing the best job of adding talent or replacing the top talent that is leaving from Miami. The rest of the ACC was kind of getting picked apart by the SEC and the Big Ten, and they weren't replacing those players with very good players. And I think it's showing primarily, Gabby, on the line of scrimmage, so offensive and defensive lines, and then just in general on defense. I think, you know, to me, 70% of these ACC teams don't have very good offensive lines and don't have very good defenses. And
Yeah.
so you're going to see a lot of high scoring, high variability type of games where it's like week to week, who knows what the results are going to
Right.
be when these teams play each other. Uh, one other point I kind of, one conclusion I've come to, and we'll see, there's a long ways to go. I kind of think the conference is only going to get one college football playoff
Yeah.
team.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Yeah. So Miami needs to win the conference
I think
and
I think the
get the job done.
ACC and I think probably the Big 12 is I think there's only going to be one Big 12 rep
Yes.
and I think there's only going to be one ACC rep. Like I think that's where it's going and then it's going to be the Big 10
And
and
it's hard
SEC
for me
show.
to push back on that,
Yeah,
honestly.
no, because of
Like,
how the season's played out for sure. There's no
so
like to me at this point it's yeah, that's that to me that's just what it's going to be.
let's talk big picture college football playoff race. Again, way too early, but it's fun to talk about just where things are at snapshot wise right now. Gabby, as I look at it, as it relates to 12-team college football playoff field, I view it as three teams kind of being a cut above the rest of the country in terms of how they're looking and the talent that they have. Ohio State, Oregon, and Miami to me are kind of your top tier right now. Would you push back on that? Would you add anyone else to that top
Yeah.
tier?
Yeah, I mean, I would I think Ole Miss is probably at least deserving of a conversation just
They're
because of what
close.
they've done.
Yeah.
They've played
Agreed.
they've done really good stuff so far.
Yep.
I think they had a tight game with Arkansas early, but handled business against Tulane, who could easily be the Group of Five rep. And what they did over the weekend against LSU was really impressive. Watching them play against Ole Miss was really impressive. So I think Ole Miss is either at the top of the second tier or maybe like bottom of that top tier so far.
Fair. I would put Oklahoma to me when they have John Mateer in
Yeah.
that second tier. I think they're very intriguing. And so to
Yep.
me, it's just kind of like John Mateer's hurt. Can you hold it down until he's back fully healthy? But when Oklahoma's John Mateer, to me, they're very dangerous.
Yeah. Agreed.
Would you put them in your field right now?
Yeah. No, Oklahoma for sure. Like I think Oklahoma's a really, really good team, especially on defense. Like, I mean, they've been awesome on defense, and the personnel is
Yeah.
really, really strong, and they're good where I think you need to be good. Just like up front, that defensive line is nuts.
Yeah. To me, Indiana looks like a for real team to me. They play Oregon in October, so
Yeah.
that'll be an interesting measuring stick for them. But I would have Indiana in right now. To me, Alabama's kind of figuring it out.
Hmm.
I'd probably put them in, even though they did lose, and looked bad losing to Florida State. I think you're going to have either one of Texas or Texas A&M get in. I don't know which
Hmm.
one of those, but I would say one of those. To me, Gabby, like Notre Dame could be scary in December, like the way they're trending and
Yep.
figuring things out. They start the start of their
I put
season
them in my top
crazy.
12. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and,
I
and
put them in there.
Notre Dame needs Miami to go win the ACC, and they need
Yep.
Texas A&M to be a college football playoff team. If
Yeah.
those two things happen, and Notre Dame is 10-2, they're getting it, and they're going to be
They're 1,000%
dangerous.
getting in. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I put Notre Dame in for those reasons. They may not play depending on what USC does from this point on. Like they may not
Yeah, it's
play
USC.
a ranked team unless it's USC the rest of the way through. Their schedule is pretty atrocious. They play basically the bottom tier of the ACC and like USC,
Yeah,
and with like I think a couple random games maybe sprinkled in there. They're gonna go for blood every game because they have to have
they
like
have to.
they
Yeah,
have to like do it, and they've been
pretty
good.
wins.
So Jeremiah Loves and those guys are figuring it out,
CJ
just what they're doing
Carr
there.
is
Yeah,
is a good player. He's a good
yeah,
player.
no, I think Notre Dame's going to end up getting it only because I see like with the way the season's going, I see how muddy this is all going to get, and I think Notre Dame
Yep,
is just going to cruise quietly to 10-2. I do think I like A&M, and then I think Miami's obviously the real deal. So like if those are your two losses, and you're saying, hey, you're maybe losing to two college football playoff teams, and then you kind of handled business the rest of the way in, and you're Notre Dame,
they're getting in.
they're going to get in. My take right now is
Yeah,
Notre Dame is going to get in.
I agree. My Big 12 team would be Texas Tech.
Yep.
After they beat Utah, I think that was kind of
Yeah.
a lock. Or
Yeah.
they got to handle business, but
Yeah. They got
they
to play
look like
Arizona. I
that's
think
going
they
to
got
get
to
in.
go to Arizona State, which is interesting because Arizona State just beat
Yeah,
TCU, who kind of got hot, but I think TCU
right.
lost their receiver. But Arizona State is always kind of tricky just because of what they can do. How they kind of turned it up at the end, tail end of last year. So that'll be an interesting test for them. But to me, it's Texas Tech. Maybe Iowa State. They're kind of playing some good ball too. But to me, Texas Tech is better than Iowa State.
And then the group of five team, to me, it's I would probably say Memphis. Uh,
Yeah.
but honestly, like I think Navy could be right there. I think North Texas is an interesting team with their quarterback, Drew Mestamaker. Like
Yeah.
he's on fire right now as a quarterback. And then of course USF, they're right there too. But I'd
Are you riding off
probably
Tulane?
lean Memphis. Yeah, Memphis got that Arkansas win.
Yeah.
Um, Tulane beat Duke, which is an impressive win. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Tulane should be there as well. It's going to be one of those American teams probably,
Yeah, I think the American champion. I think it's just going to end up being the American champion. Like whoever that
Yeah.
is just going to be. And I don't know who that's going to be yet. But um but yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, who is there anyone else you have in there or did you run
So
through your
that's
12?
that's kind of my field. It's just like Texas or Texas A&M. I don't know. I
Yeah.
Georgia's not in here, so maybe that's
Yeah.
controversial.
Yeah.
Uh,
I have Georgia in mine.
okay.
Just because I think that's a really good I mean, they were a wide open dropped deep post pass away from potentially winning that one,
Okay.
you know.
On the flip side, though, they're also Tennessee vomiting on themselves away
Yeah.
from
Yeah. No, that's fair.
having two losses. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
kind of a Georgia hater this year, to be honest,
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
I'll own that. I'll own that.
No, no, no. I mean, you could be right. Like, I think that there's definitely like the Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M. Like,
Yeah,
I think Oklahoma's still going to be really tested. Like, I think Oklahoma could kind of be a part of this SEC kind of, everything going on. Like, Oklahoma
right.
could end up being
Churn.
yeah, just like the churn of the SEC. Like, I think like some combination, like there's going to be schools, whether it's Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas A&M, like LSU has just one loss now, like maybe you can throw them in that conversation, but like there's going to be probably a really talented SEC team or two or three that aren't going to get in just because of you have to fit in some of these other schools as well. And then like again, you got like the Indiana and the Big Ten. Like I think
I
they're,
left Penn State out, so
yeah,
maybe that's,
Okay, Penn
you know,
State. I have Penn State in. Like Penn State's another one that
yeah,
I still think that's a really good. I mean, okay.
they are.
I think that
No,
they're a
they're
good
good.
team, but I don't know if they're a great offense, but I think they're good enough to be in this conversation.
They are a good team.
I kind of have like 15 teams here where it's just like
I know.
I don't know, I
It's
feel
so
like it could
hard.
be any
Yeah.
combination of, do you have like a dark horse, like a team that's like not an obvious, like, or not like within like this tier that you think is like, I'm kind of keeping an eye on these guys, and I don't feel like a ton of conviction about mine. I'm looking up their schedule just to see if I even want to go there, just to see what else is
I
kind of
mean,
in
for
front of them.
me, before last week it was Utah, but then Utah didn't look too good against Texas
Yeah.
Tech. But
Okay.
who do you got? Give me your name.
Bro, mine is Missouri.
Yeah, I mean they're flashing.
So I think Missouri is kind of like a sneaky like team that no one in the SEC wants is gonna like want to play. Like Bo
Yeah,
Prabilla has been solid. Ahmad Hardy is like the best player in college football that nobody knows about. For like, I feel like no one's talking about him. Like, I don't think you're seeing his name on any of these Heisman odds, but he's like leading the nation in rushing, has broken the most has like the most missed tackles forced of any player in the country. He's just a sophomore. He was a transfer from UL Monroe. Kind of went under the radar totally after like an awesome freshman year for those guys, and is just like quietly just destroying everyone. And then they got, I think they got a good, nice, solid defense. They always play a good brand of defense. They got Missouri. I mean, they got Alabama. They have a bye week now. Then they have to play Alabama in Columbia. Play Auburn, who I think is totally fraudulent. Vanderbilt, obviously, I think that's a winnable game. They have Texas A&M at home too. They have Mississippi
so let
State
me
at home.
tell
They
let me say this. Let me say
Go ahead,
this. Why why can't Vanderbilt be the dark horse team?
because I just like Missouri better.
No, I know. But I'm
Yeah, no,
saying
they can be. Oh, they can be
like
for
they're
sure.
pounding everyone.
Yeah.
And they got Bama this week, so
Yeah.
maybe that
They kind of had
ends
like a
this week, but
they had like a three-quarter
everyone
scare against Utah State over the weekend, but then they kind of pulled away. Two
yeah,
and a half quarter scare. But
right.
yeah, no, Vandy could and look,
Right.
they play Alabama this week, and then look, that could be messy, and then Bama has to go and play Missouri the next week in Columbia. Like I'm telling you,
Right.
Missouri quietly is in a half decent spot. Like their November is A&M at home, which is manageable. Mississippi State at home, who's actually playing some good football right now. They go to Oklahoma in late November, and then they close the season out with Arkansas. Like I feel like as far as just SEC draws go, I mean they
These
avoid
SEC schedules are
are
just
brutal. Oh my
different. They're
gosh, bro.
just
So different. So like I mean you don't have to
yeah.
play Georgia, you don't have to play LSU, you don't have to play Tennessee. You get Alabama and Texas A&M at home, which depending who you're asking could be, maybe the two most challenging teams. You do have to go to Oklahoma, but for the most part, like I feel like they got a pretty solid draw as far as just like what an SEC schedule could potentially look like. No Texas. So like I feel like this is a relatively manageable schedule. They're undefeated at this point, and you know we'll see
Yeah.
what happens, man. Got to buy before they have to play Alabama. I mean, I don't know. I think Missouri, like to me, Missouri is like that school that I think could quietly enter this top 12 or quietly just be that team
Yeah.
that
I
sneaks
agree.
in that no one is expecting at this part of the season.
Yeah. And again, I'm saying why can't Vanderbilt be a dark horse, but they're gonna have to play Alabama, then LSU, then Missouri, then Texas. So
Yeah,
good luck with
that's
that.
that's that's tough. It's tough.
Anyways, it's way too early to project this stuff, but I think I think one thing you and I can both see coming, right? Like, is this the year where we see a bunch of not a bunch, but we see an 8-4 SEC team? Are we going
Yes.
to cross that threshold this year? Because I think that's coming. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but for sure, like there's going to
When they expand
be
to
two or
16, it's
three.
definitely going to be that's going to happen for sure.
There's going to be two or three 9-3 SEC teams. I bet.
Definitely.
Don't you think?
Yes,
So
100%. They're gonna get in and over a 9-3 SEC team's gonna get in over whatever comes out, whatever else comes out of the ACC.
second place in the
Yeah,
ACC. Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
think the only way a second ACC team gets in is if like Miami's undefeated
Runs
goes
the
to the ACC
table.
championship
Yeah,
and then they lose a close game in the ACC championship. I think that's the only world where the ACC gets a second team in.
right.
But
And the
I don't
team
think
they
that's gonna
lose to
happen.
would have to be like Georgia Tech, who's like,
Right.
also has a good record
Exactly.
at
Right.
that time. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, Florida State week's here, coming off the bye, back at it. Go check out the website insideu.com. We'll have plenty of nice content for Florida State week here throughout the week. Appreciate everyone for listening. And until next time, take care.